The other thing, and this kind of I thought was interesting when we were discussing it earlier, is dodgeball starting in different areas in the country. What effect would that have maybe on styles of play, or even potentially I could see rule changes as different areas kind of have their own way of playing?
I think that'll be something that, I mean, there's no way that I could say Northern Colorado is going to play the most boring kind of dodgeball anyone could ever imagine. Because who knows? Northern Colorado could be the Memphis Tigers of college dodgeball and just run and gun relentlessly. You can't make that kind of, you can't make that whole, I don't even know what the Big Giant Head is, to lose 38 wins? Whatever. Anyway, Raymer's an idiot.
Yeah, the color commentary from the Big Head's going downhill very quickly.
The point is, he's lost all coherence.
The point that I was kind of thinking, I don't know how much of a change this would make. I'm thinking, different areas, there's different popular sports. If you go to certain areas, maybe baseball's big. In other areas, football's big. And that definitely could influence how you play. If everyone on the team has a big background in baseball, that could definitely affect the way that everyone learns how to pitch and throw, the grippy throw and whatnot. Whereas maybe football you would have a more defensive approach.
I think that's something, because when you look at the teams in California is a huge college baseball state. Some of these guys in the off season, want to keep their arms in shape by playing dodgeball. You're going to see guys coming out of California that can throw a big rubber kickball 60, 70 miles an hour, maybe faster. I mean, I haven't seen every team play, that's currently in the NCDA, but I can tell you that kind of speed is lost on a whole team. You might have one guy that's got a cannon, but a team from California where baseball's that big of a sport. I mean, you could have guys that all throw 60 plus, and that's a feat.
It would be damaging. So you would definitely agree that sports popular in one area could affect the gameplay. So just hypothetical situation, what about like a school maybe where curling was popular? What would you see that doing to the gameplay for the team?
Well, I think that's going to lead to a team where they're all about precision. Because curling is a precision sport.
Not to mention boring.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be slow, precise, but you'll have guys on these curling teams. If a guy wants to hit you, a little below the middle of your right shin, it's going. There's nothing you can do about it.
I would agree.
They will snipe you.
Mm-hmm.
They are not afraid. And I think that's something, that's one of those things that's going to be really interesting.
And I know we've mentioned this before, but I think that it might be worth bringing up again. The idea of conferences. I mean, do you think conferences would really be all that necessary? Do you think it would still just kind of work itself out? Because even right now, the stretch of teams goes from northern Michigan all the way down. I believe the southernmost team we have at the moment is in Louisiana. So, I mean, do you see conferences really making that big of a difference or being that necessary?
Well, I mean, I think that, it's one of those situations where it just depends on how the sport expands. If you keep having these little sporadic pockets of expansion, like it starts in Michigan, and then you get some schools in the auto belt, the Chicago area there, and then they kind of trickle down south, and then they kind of get a couple spots westward. Mm-hmm. I don't think that conferences in the next year, I don't think next year we should start trying to institute a conference system. But I think in 5 years, 10 years, if there are teams all over the nation, I think that conferences would be a really good idea. Because the thing about dodgeball that I've noticed is that the season is really inconsistent. Because you have, a couple tournaments that you'll play in during the season. You might play a home game here, travel there. But it's one of those situations where it's not that consistent. You're not playing a game every week. And so I think that is something that conferences would kind of help contribute to, is that over time, if you have to play 2 games against every team in your conference, home or away, you're going to be out a lot more traveling. And, as a club team, that might not be feasible at first, but, eventually you'll kind of work to it. But the point is that eventually I see a need for conferences, but right now I don't think that that's something we need to worry about.
It would just be a shame that with all the interest that's obviously showing up on the West Coast, if, the league that we have now didn't capitalize on it.
Yeah.
I think everyone could agree that if the league were to stop where it is right now, that it would stagnate pretty quick. And within 5 or 6 years, we might not have the interest level we have now without pulling in new teams and new talent.
I think the league really needs to jump on this interest, but I think we need to be careful about how we do it. We don't want to, say all these teams out west want to start because, and at first, maybe an NCDA West, and an NCDA East where you have, you have the nation almost split in half, and there's 2 leagues basically would be really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Something where these teams don't have to travel week in and week out.
Gotcha.
So, Alex, if you could give any advice, since you're actually on the Western Dodgeball team, you've been involved with the program a little longer than I have. Is there any advice you'd give to the schools wishing to start teams?
I mean, I would say first and foremost, the number one thing is going to be, once you get something started, stick with it. Because I know you have a lot of people where they hear about it and they're like, oh, dodgeball, it sounds great. But they might think, like, oh, no, that's goofy. Or, it's never going to get taken seriously. So if at first you don't succeed, keep doing things to kind of raise interest. Like I know at the University of Kentucky, was it yesterday? They had, for part of their orientation, had a big kind of invite that was a campus-wide dodgeball game where everyone was invited. If they wanted to come play, they could. If they wanted to come watch, they could. And I believe they had like 1,000 people show up.
Yeah,
and from what we heard, they had 75 people sign up for their team. I know most of the teams that we've met at tournaments don't have that many players middle of the season. And they've just started, and they've got at least 75 people interested. If they could draw, a quarter of them, they've got enough to definitely staff a team up. So
and I think that the interesting. We like to give a shout out to Raymer's mom, who's walking down the stairs. You can't see her, but she's there. She's like,